Queen Elizabeth I, myths and the woman behind them. History often remembers rulers through symbols rather than people. It reduces long lives into simple titles. And over time, those titles harden into truth. Few figures have been shaped by this process more than Queen Elizabeth I. She is remembered as the Virgin Queen, a ruler untouched by marriage, unmoved by desire, unburdened by doubt. But the historical record tells a far more complicated story. Letters written in her own hand, reports sent by foreign ambassadors, accounts from those who stood close to power. Together they reveal not a woman immune to fear or emotion, but a ruler navigating survival in one of the most dangerous courts in Europe. To understand Elizabeth, we have to set aside the myth and return to the record. The first, Elizabeth I never intended to marry. The most enduring belief about Elizabeth is that she never wanted marriage, that she rejected it from the start as part of a grand, calculated plan. The evidence does not support this. Early in her reign, Elizabeth actively pursued marriage negotiations. This wasn't just casual or symbolic. She was serious. She engaged in prolonged discussions with some of the most powerful men in Europe. Philip II of Spain, Archduke Charles of Austria, François, Duke of Anjou. These negotiations involved treaties, succession planning, and years of diplomatic exchange. Elizabeth did not dismiss marriage lightly. She delayed it. Her private correspondence shows hesitation rather than certainty. She dealt with some internal conflict. Marriage offered stability, but it also threatened her authority. Elizabeth had watched her father's marriages end in disgrace, exile, and execution. She understood that marriage was not simply a personal choice, it was a transfer of power, and she was not ready to surrender it. Elizabeth didn't reject marriage out of confidence, she rejected it out of caution. The second myth, the Virgin Queen title, reflected personal purity. The title Virgin Queen is often interpreted literally, as proof of chastity and as evidence of emotional distance. In reality, the title was a form of political symbolism. Elizabeth understood the power of image and perception. She shaped how she was seen with deliberate care. Foreign ambassadors reported endlessly on her appearance, her mannerisms, her relationships. Their letters speculate and their observations linger. Elizabeth never confirmed these rumors. She also never silenced them. By allowing ambiguity, she retained leverage. Virginity became a metaphor, not a biography. It symbolized independence. It signaled that no foreign power ruled beside her. She was married not to a man, but to England itself. The title unified loyalty. It deflected questions about succession, and it elevated her above ordinary rulers. It was a great strategy. So in short, the Virgin Queen wasn't a personal confession, it was an intentional political decision. At number 3 we have, Elizabeth ruled with absolute confidence. Elizabeth is often remembered as decisive and unshaken, a ruler certain of her authority. The reality is more fragile. Elizabeth ruled without an heir. Her legitimacy was constantly questioned, and her position as a female monarch made her vulnerable. Plots against her were real. The Ridolfi plot, the Babington plot, and the Northern Rebellion, to name a few. Each threatened not only her throne, but her life. Her spymaster, Francis Walsingham, constructed one of Europe's earliest intelligence networks for this very reason. He had many letters intercepted and instructed that the homes of perceived threats be watched and that conversations be reported. Elizabeth understood that power required vigilance. She ruled not from a place of sharp awareness. So yes, Elizabeth's court looked glamorous. Behind it was constant surveillance due to a bit of paranoia. For number 4, Elizabeth was universally loved. Popular memory often paints Queen Elizabeth I as a queen embraced by her people and unquestioned by those who served her. A ruler whose authority was secure, whose reign unfolded with broad approval and national unity. The historical record tells a different story. Elizabeth ruled a nation deeply divided, religiously, politically, and socially. Those divisions did not fade with time, they intensified. Religious tension never disappeared during her reign. Catholics lived under constant suspicion. Laws restricted their worship. Priests were surveilled, imprisoned, and in some cases executed, not for rebellion, but for refusal to conform. At the same time, Puritans, those who believed Elizabeth's reforms did not go far enough, felt equally betrayed. They viewed her church settlement as incomplete, too tolerant, too ceremonial. Elizabeth satisfied neither side. What looked like moderation was experienced by many as oppression. Her court was not a place of universal loyalty. It was a place of competing agendas. Members of Parliament pressed Elizabeth relentlessly on two issues she refused to resolve: marriage and succession. They believed the stability of the realm depended on clear answers. Elizabeth believed clear answers would weaken her position. Elizabeth mastered a particular kind of power, the power of postponement. She listened carefully, she allowed debate, she responded with words that sounded reassuring but committed her to nothing. Promises were implied, decisions were deferred. This frustrated her advisors, it angered Parliament, and yet it worked. By refusing to be pinned down, Elizabeth prevented any single faction from gaining dominance. She kept power balanced precisely by never fully satisfying anyone, and it came at a cost. Elizabeth lived with constant awareness that loyalty could shift. That approval was conditional. That affection could turn into opposition. She did not rule because she was universally loved. She ruled because she understood power well enough to survive without being loved at all. At number 5, Elizabeth coldly ordered the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. Perhaps no decision defines the reign of Queen Elizabeth I more than the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. In popular memory, the moment is often portrayed as swift and unfeeling. A decisive queen removing a rival without hesitation. A calculated act of political necessity. The historical record tells a more troubling story. Elizabeth did not rush toward Mary's execution. She delayed it again and again. For nearly 2 decades, Mary remained alive, imprisoned, and dangerous. She was the focal point of Catholic hope, a living symbol around which plots formed. Elizabeth knew the threat Mary represented, but she also understood something deeper. To execute an anointed queen was unprecedented. It challenged the divine authority of monarchy itself. If one crowned ruler could be lawfully killed, then no crown was truly secure. Elizabeth feared that precedent. Her letters from this period reveal hesitation rather than resolve. They speak of uncertainty, of moral weight, of consequences that could not be undone. She vacillated between necessity and fear, between security and principle. Her advisors pressed her relentlessly. They argued that Mary's continued existence endangered the realm. That delay itself was reckless. Elizabeth resisted, not because she doubted Mary's guilt, but because she understood what execution would mean beyond the moment. To kill Mary was not simply to eliminate a threat, it was to redefine monarchy. When the execution warrant was finally signed, Elizabeth later claimed it had been carried out without her full consent. She insisted she had not intended for it to be acted upon so quickly, that it had been done against her wishes. Historians continue to debate this claim. Some view it as political self-preservation. Others see it as genuine shock. What cannot be disputed is Elizabeth's reaction. She was shaken, angered, and visibly distressed. Those close to her recorded her fury, not at Mary, but at the act itself, at the finality of what had been done in her name. The execution did not bring peace, it brought clarity. Elizabeth had crossed a line from which monarchy would never fully recover. She had secured her throne, but at a cost she deeply understood. Elizabeth did not take Mary's life lightly, and she did not forget it. The decision haunted her. She had preserved her reign, but in doing so, she had altered the moral framework of royal power forever. Elizabeth understood what history often overlooks. Power does not shield a ruler from consequence. It only ensures they must bear it alone. And Elizabeth knew, perhaps better than anyone, that executing Mary, Queen of Scots, would change monarchy forever. Myth 6. Elizabeth's reign brought religious peace. Elizabeth's religious settlement is often described as a triumph of compromise, a careful middle path that brought unity to a divided nation, a solution that finally ended decades of religious conflict. In reality, the settlement enforced conformity rather than harmony. Elizabeth did not seek agreement, she sought order. Catholics were tolerated only insofar as they remained quiet. Their worship was restricted. their loyalty questioned, their movements monitored. Priests were surveilled, imprisoned, and in some cases executed, not because they led rebellions, but because their presence alone was viewed as a threat to stability. At the same time, Puritans, those who believed the Church of England retained too much Catholic influence, felt equally constrained. They pressed for deeper reform, simpler worship, clearer doctrine. Elizabeth resisted them as firmly as she resisted Rome. Public challenges to the settlement were silenced. Preachers were censured, pamphlets were suppressed. Elizabeth tolerated private belief, but she demanded public obedience. What mattered was not what subjects believed in their hearts, but how they behaved in the open. Attendance at approved services was required. Uniformity was enforced through law. Dissent was treated as disobedience. The result was not religious peace in the modern sense. It was religious control. Conflict did not disappear, it was contained. Elizabeth maintained balance by refusing to allow either side to dominate. She positioned herself above theology, acting as final authority. Peace was maintained through authority, not consensus. Through law, not persuasion. It was a fragile equilibrium, held together by vigilance, discipline, and the will of the Queen. And lastly, Elizabeth ruled from strength, not fear. The final myth is the simplest, and perhaps the most misleading. That Queen Elizabeth I ruled because she felt secure, because her authority was unquestioned, because her position was firm. The historical record shows the opposite. Elizabeth ruled with constant awareness of how easily power could be lost. She had seen it happen before, to her mother, to relatives, to rival monarchs across Europe. She understood that a crown did not guarantee safety, it only magnified risk. Elizabeth lived without an heir, surrounded by enemies, watched by foreign powers eager for weakness. Security was never assumed, it was maintained. Every delay in decision-making was intentional. Every calculated silence was strategic. Every ambiguous promise was a form of protection. These were not signs of indecision, they were signs of survival. Elizabeth did not rush towards certainty. Certainty closed doors. Certainty fixed positions. Certainty created enemies. Instead, she mastered uncertainty. By withholding answers, she retained leverage. By postponing resolution, she prevented opposition from organizing. By saying just enough, she kept control of the moment. Her reign required constant adjustment, balancing factions, managing perception, anticipating betrayal. Elizabeth did whatever she deemed necessary to preserve her reign, not out of cruelty, but out of understanding. She knew that mercy without authority invited chaos, that decisiveness without caution invited ruin. Fear did not paralyze her, it sharpened her, it made her attentive, it made her restrained, it made her willing to endure isolation in exchange for survival. Elizabeth did not rule because she was fearless. She ruled because she understood fear and refused to be ruled by it. In the end, her strength was not found in certainty or confidence. It was found in vigilance, in restraint, in her ability to survive where others fell. Elizabeth's reign was not built on comfort. It was built on endurance. Elizabeth I was not a myth made flesh. She was a woman shaped by danger, intelligence, and restraint. History simplified her because myths are easier to remember than people. But when we return to the record, to the letters, the eyewitness reports, the documents written in real time, we see a ruler navigating impossible choices, not untouched, not unafraid, but enduring. This is why history must be retold.